Have you ever been victimized by New Age spirituality?
We've been waiting for you. We've been waiting.
You're going to want to listen up.
I'm Megan, an intuitive life coach and Reiki master.
I'm Ryan, a professional astrologer, and we want to show you what spirituality is by talking about what it is not.
Con artist.
Yes.
Snake oil salesman.
There are so many susceptible people out there.
And then they're tainted. They're ruined. They don't want to come back to spirituality.
We still have a lot to learn, and we will humble ourselves and learn, I think, every freaking day. This is Clairannoyance,
a podcast of spiritual interference.
And we're back another week. Oh my God.
It's leap year today, though.
It is, as of recording. This never comes out on the day that whenever we reference a day. But yeah, it's leap year today, 29th, which is like a fake out of your birthday because your birthday is March 1st.
It is. So
it's like it should be your birthday.
I had a love-hate relationship with leap year. But like I said, this year it's doing me a favor because my 39th is going to be on a Friday and then my 40th next year will be on the Saturday. So I'm okay with it. But it robbed me of a good Saturday 30th birthday. But I also don't party anymore. So it's not really
I was like, what do you even do? Like, as a sober person, what do you even do?
I have a boxing event for, my monthly group. And then I'm going to go to brunch. But I went back to like, my brain goes back to party, Megan. And I'm like, okay, we're going to get together. And so like, I was planning this Sunday event to go like to a DJ and like be out late too. My ass likes to get up at 4:30 in the morning. So I had to like rein it in. I'm like, this is not who you are. But I was like, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that. And then it's like, you don't want to be around drunk people. Like, what are you doing? Go to brunch like a normal person, like a person who doesn't party, you idiot. So
I feel like I don't know if we would be friends if we had met in like West Hollywood. Because I'm out all the time.
I think I meet people who party. It's just I still go out occasionally if you can get grandma, to stay up past 8. But no, I think we would have, but just in a different context.
Different context for sure. We would have met at a coffee shop or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, I'm like super stoked about the guest that we have today.
Me too. I've been following her for so long.
Yeah, it's been a minute
since
now.
Like 2022.
Damn.
Yeah.
Maybe longer than me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. This sounds terrible, but because I feel like it's like, not to toot my own intellectual horn, but like, I feel like it's so rare that like somebody makes me think like truly this person, Victoria Thérèse, is literally so intelligent, like wise beyond her years. And
Agreed.
Like I literally feel like I learn every time something pops up on my feed. And it's just like such a refreshing feeling because I feel like there's a lot of, in this community and any modality that you might be doing. I feel like people do the basics like ABCs, like astrology, for example. Like all I ever freaking see from astrologers online. Yeah. Or they're like, let's talk about the second house. Let's talk about the rising sign. It's like the most
she's a deep diver.
Shit. Yes, deep diver, very complex topics, but like in an approachable way. And it's just like, and the breadth of topics here are like insane to me.
With the focus on humanity, though, like all of humanity and not just like the white girl aesthetic. Well, she's not white, but like, but like, whereas like white girl appropriation. Have you seen that meme where it's like, that's some white people shit for someone who is white or it's something like that. Like I am constantly like, God, white girls, like spiritual white girls. And obviously I am.
You are
Caucasian.
one. Me too. I know. But I feel like we try hard to like be more inclusive.
Educate ourselves. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But so she approaches, when she, like I was just watching a video, like she does eloquent call outs where it's, where you can even tell these people have never even thought about the premise of how she's approaching it. And she'll be like, that's really cruel. And it's like, oh, damn, it is. And I hope you're able to like take that call out and like use it in your practice, especially if people are trusting you with with their souls.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I can already tell this interview is going to be like, when you're like reading a really good book and you have to like go back and read a sentence like multiple times. I feel like
Hmm.
the experience that listeners are going to have in this episode is going to be like, pause, go back 15 seconds. What? Like I
Yeah.
just feel like there's going to be like a lot of listening and re-listening in this. And I'm so excited. So, with that
So let's
said,
stop fangirling. Like introduce
yeah.
her.
Yes, Victoria, please introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What should people know about you?
I am Victoria Thérèse. I am Chinese Canadian. I've lived, worked, and studied in 6 different countries. I am basically a psychic medium, spiritual advisor. Um, I'm trying to gauge like correctly, like what are the other things that I use to define myself that people are like, ah, yes, this makes sense. It's interesting because every place I've ever studied, I've gone to school in about 5 different countries, and all of them are on my Mercury line,
Mm.
Ooh.
on my astrocartography, which I thought was actually kind of funny. But basically, I'm really passionate about bringing like practicality to spiritual practice and also respectfully kind of returning them back to their roots, because I think so much of New Age is so ungrounded. It's so based on this like um the cherry picking aspect, which I understand why people do that. That's so human of us. But it takes away the necessary foundations that are like very clearly missing. And when you have a bunch of people leaving from Christian spaces, which is, even if you're American, you don't identify with Christianity, the Christian culture is in everything. It's rooted in capitalism and your Disney fairy tales, the Hallmark Channel. All
Mhm.
these stories are so rooted in that like Christian foundation. So all of a sudden you enter into like, spirituality, you want to go seek deeper meaning, right? Which is, makes sense. But what essentially happens is you start the same habits that you had under your Christian culture, which like it's not a bad thing. It's just a little bit not as intentional as it's meant to be. And so people kind of lose sight of the spiritual philosophy around the foundations of the Eastern traditions, right? It's a lot of philosophical study. And the one thing that I think is also missing is the importance of acknowledging the world around us. And that includes studying and continuing to learn, right? That's something that isn't really prioritized, I noticed.
Mhm.
Um, but sorry, me going on a tangent because I'm just really obsessed
No,
with
we
everything.
love tangents. But one
Yeah.
thing before, like, when Ryan and I were talking, is on pinned on the top of your TikTok page, and I love this. Is it's about your like this is not a morality safe space, and so your intro kind of just went straight into how I wanted to um introduce this because I love that. Like so in your because I'm going to bastardize it and butcherize it if I try. In your words, what does that mean? Because I think that it's so important in this space to remove morality, which sounds ick, like in spirituality. So, but I love that premise, and it's pinned it's like your first video right at the top of your page. So, I think that's such a great way to start this.
I have learned that deconstruction through language has been something that's been really supportive to my journey in my spiritual practice, but also in the way that I show up in activism and how I advocate for myself and my communities and people that aren't in my community either. But I remember reading a lot about, I think it was like books like The Courage to Be Disliked. I think Osho as well. Some of these really controversial spiritual thinkers and such, because I don't know a single one, even in the Eastern traditions that we know of as the last like 200 years, that haven't been a little bit controversial in some sense. And that's really, we'll get into that. But I don't believe in morality in the same way that people come to understand it. I would say maybe I lean more towards ethics, which is more of that like community focus, but I don't believe in like right, bad, good, wrong. Right,
That's
good,
so
bad, right, wrong.
powerful. That's so because when you take away that judgment and that label, I mean, you're able to go from a 90-degree, viewpoint to at least a 180.
Yeah, because it's not like when you ask somebody like, why is that bad? A lot of people don't even really understand where they got that from. So when you have to take away that label, you have to actually think about how you came to that conclusion, right? Like I remember I was joking with my mother the other day because it was really warm outside in Canada in like January, February. We're a little bit like, And I remember saying, I was like, this is great for me because I hate the cold, but that's terrible for like the world at large when you think about like the environmental issues, right?
Mhm.
So you think more about why we label things as such. And what's also really interesting is, Christianity, Judaism, and Hinduism, not Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam all come, apparently, according to scholars, all come from Zoroastrianism, which is still practiced, I think, in modern day Iran, but at very small numbers. And this was supposedly the foundations of these, dare I call them myths, because it's a very controversial thing. I believe that religion is real, depending on the perceiver, which we will also get into. I remember our show notes. But the idea of the battle of good versus evil actually derives from Zoroastrianism. And and I'm not saying that it didn't exist prior to that, right? Because we obviously know that like laws were introduced, with what was that, like the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth thing. I can't remember what era that was, but that was like one of the OG like law, like legal systems in the world, right? When we were just like, okay, well, if you steal, that's wrong because XYZ. But we understood the implications, and a lot of our perspectives on justice or what is good, bad, right, and wrong derives from like legislation. And what's so interesting about that is it is such a historical shift in culture, because law informs culture, but oftentimes when you look at the history of why laws came into place, it's because you're preserving the property of certain, usually more wealthy individuals, right? So
Mhm.
when you think about how steeped in this like good, bad, right, wrong thing kind of comes into play, it's kind of weird. And it's also funny because the biggest pushback I get from the question of like right, wrong, good, bad is people be like, well, like, don't you think like murder is wrong? And I'm like, well, there's nuance. It's always nuance. Like there's plenty of people in the world. Like I can tell you, like everybody has learned this at some point in our lives. We all know that certain things are right, wrong, good, and bad, but does that stop us from actually doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't consider and this is a practice of interconnectedness. And it also comes back to my background in policy, because I have a master's in political science with a concentration in policy analysis. The effect of the community repercussions of legislation, right? So you have the policy output versus policy outcome. The output is essentially when you make something legal or illegal. And that is just like, okay, that's that. But what you also have is the outcome, which is a societal effect. So there are typically indirect effects of whatever legislation came out, but it has big societal implications, right? So when you make, can I be extra controversial?
Yes,
Please.
please. Yeah, heavy. Go
When you make
go hard in the paint. We're here for
Yeah.
it.
when you make abortion illegal, for example, right? That is the output, right? Okay, abortion is illegal. But what are the other implications around that? The dissolution of healthcare. It's not even just about like, women being able to give birth anymore. The mortality rate, maternal mortality rate shoots up for sure. That's an outcome. And we know that for a fact. More women end up in jail due to miscarriages, which is crazy, right? Because they're accusing you of. So, and then all of a sudden you see all these societal shifts, right? It's not just making abortion illegal. There's so many more implications to it. And now a lot of doctors across the country are like, they're leaving states, and there's like almost like no more doctors left to actually even just provide like just some like general like women's health care that may not be completely related to pregnancy and childbearing. But that is the implication, and it affects everybody. So when I think about interconnectedness in relationship to policy, in my spiritual practice of acknowledging that, okay, like if I have this, like this book, this piece of paper, it's, I when I'm holding on to this notebook, I am also touching every single thing in the world around it because, the paper came from trees and the trees were watered by the rains that came from the clouds. And the tree also grew because of the sun, and the people that cut down the trees, and the people that were working at the mill, that worked in the printing press, like all these different things that led to this book coming into my hands. I'm also seeing this in policy, by which, the illusion of individualism, of, the illusion that like, oh, well, like making something like legal or illegal just results in making this thing illegal. No, you affect the lives of so many people, right? Not policy, politics. My favorite definition is who gets what, when, and how. So anytime I even have an opinion, it doesn't matter how strong the opinion is. It doesn't matter whether or not I vote or how I participate in government. If I have an opinion about how someone else should live, that is political.
Mm.
Ooh. Dang.
So yeah, so it's this the way that my spirituality has deeply informed my politics and vice versa is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But it comes back to that like understanding of humanity, right? Like if the concept of oneness that we're also obsessed with, especially in new age spaces, that they use to silence people of color and other minorities. Like, oh, like, but we're all one though. Like, why are you bringing up this problem to separate us? Whoa.
Yeah, I'm now discrediting, your struggle, your ancestors' struggle, because it makes me uncomfortable because I'm white.
Oh yeah.
Back to white people shit.
Always back to white people shit, dude.
Always back to white people.
Oh yeah, it's really fun. But what was it? My ancestry is kind of funny. So I grew up in Beijing mostly, but I was born in Hong Kong. But it was British Hong Kong back then. And my dad's side were well, it's very controversial politically, so it's really hard for me to talk about Hong Kong. But my father's family actually was from the mainland, and they moved to Hong Kong, I think, like somewhere in the middle between like half of the siblings being born. And then my mom's side, they were always in Hong Kong, but I think there's at least 4 generations of Europeans on my mom's side, because there was intermarriage and stuff like that. So I have background as well in like Finnish, Dutch, and Scottish ancestry.
Oh.
And so
I'm 70% Finnish. I can see it.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's actually so fun. My mom actually, like, she is always like trying to find like Finnish people, which is like the cutest thing ever, because she has a last name that doesn't actually exist in Finland. So I think that our great grandfather changed it. But this man is like is the whitest dude I've ever like, like the 1800s guys with the little like mustache, like
wire
he's
mashes.
Like oh yeah, like pictures, I'm just like, damn, like, you're really white. And his wife was like super super Chinese. Like she like always wore like the very traditional like Chinese clothing and stuff. And it's just really interesting how they like got along, I guess, because she
funny
kept
how
it.
love can like like when your soul sees like love just like doesn't matter that like these two people in two radically different times. It's not like now where it was like, like, I mean, those are two polar opposites. You got a homeboy with a wire mustache and, like, and your great nana in traditional, Chinese attire. I mean, that is so cool.
It's really, really cool. But I like to say this, we were colonized by the Christianity, the Christian missionaries. I think my grandparents' era, I think, or yeah, right around there. And what's interesting is there's this, they're called rice Christians. And in basically Christian missionaries will go into poorer countries and say, hey, if you convert to Christianity, we'll give you food.
Hey, we see you struggling. And if you do exactly what we want, we're going to give you just a slice of bread.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Bud.
You want to live?
So
save your soul.
Pod.
Here you go. Instead of just actually helping, which is what Jesus would have wanted. Okay. Like not just to be like, hey, here's some love and good fortune. I am blessed and I would like to pass these blessings on to you. But no, that's not good enough, is it?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, even about like Christianity in regards to identity. It's that like Christians are so attached to being Christian, which isn't like a bad thing. It's just like it's a human nature thing when we are really, really attached to our identities. But spiritual practice allows us to give a little bit of wiggle room in being like, the duality of I am and I am not. And in order to access, and it was funny, I had this little intuitive hit before I like sat down with you guys. And I was like, oh, groundedness is just knowing who you are and having that to come home to. So like no matter what you build off on, right? Like you do all these intuitive things, you practice all this divination, you can always come back to you. And I don't think you can pursue like when people are like, yeah, like I just want to find out like my shadows and like find out what's wrong with me. I'm like, whoa, if you're trying to find out what's wrong with you, you're not ready to do shadow work. Shadow work's not about what's wrong with me, right? These practices require the knowingness of self. And the two biggest gateways I see into New Age is twin flames and
Jesus
manifestation.
Christ. Fuck. God.
Manifestation twin flames, I get the romance. Like, and you want so badly to believe that this boyfriend or girlfriend who is abusing you and ignoring you is the love of your life because you're addicted to the dopamine. And I get it. I understand how you get here. And manifestation, like what was a beautiful principle just took off and took such a hard left that now I have a client right now, older gentleman, who he's just, I'm going to send him to your page, honestly, because he's just sending me, he's like, the soul's just reset and the manifestation. I was like, but the soul, there's no soul resetting. There's no new earth. It's the same earth. Like, no, just any asshole can create a page. Anybody can just and say what they want to. And if you say it with confidence, you're going to have a following.
Yeah. And it also reminds me, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's like the most famous TED Talk of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So he said, people don't show up for you, they show up for themselves. So you create a page that's preying on people's like deepest desperations. What are the top two things? Manifestation and twin flames, right? Manifestation is having everything that you want, right? It's sometimes some people are trying to be like, let me manifest like stability, which is really, really heartbreaking. And there's a lot of crossover between manifestation and MLMs, by the way.
Yeah.
That was scary for me to learn. It's intertwined. I'm not even, it's so scary, that progression. But twin flames is also like the desperation of like wanting to be loved, wanting to be seen. And neither of those are accurate understandings, like, or represent anything about accurate understandings of who you are as a person, right? You're trying to manifest from a place of like, I don't even know who I am. I just know I want all these things. Wanting things?
Well,
Right.
you're placing your value outside of yourself. You're placing your value in the things that you can acquire, or you're placing value in if you love me. And that's just if you don't love yourself first, it's basic 101. That's going to be a problematic issue.
What you want versus what you need. And the like twin flames really, really break my heart as well, because I remember when I was first introduced to the concept, I was studying philosophy in undergrad. And it was Plato's Symposium, which I thought was a very interesting book, by the way, because there were so many of these different theories about love, and that this twin flame thing was only one of them. It wasn't called twin flames. It was just like, oh, like the gods like split people in half and they spend their lives trying to find each other. Some of the other theories about love in the same book, within the same few chapters, was we should send male lovers to war with each other, so then like in pairs, so that they'll fight for each other and protect each other when they're in the battlefield. Another one that was really controversial was that the most divine relationship was between a man and a boy. We don't love that. We really don't love that.
Wow. Interesting.
No. People don't really like that.
Doesn't that make you? That makes me think of like when the Dalai Lama got in trouble though for kissing that boy. Do you remember that?
Yeah, when he was like the video appeared that he was like making him like,
and they were saying it's so normal apparently.
Yeah, I think it really, that's the scary thing, because I remember I made a critique about that, and I had some people like be very defensive. And so the thing is, I think it's possible that we may not have enough cultural context, but at the same time, I really don't know. I think it's one of those things where I'm just like, okay, it was enough for my video to get taken down.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
So,
dang.
which very
So
rarely
people were
happens. So I
getting
was like,
defensive because they obviously didn't agree. I mean, I don't. No one is on board with pedophilia. Let's state that here. But
Right.
the cultural context too does make sense because I mean, my family, we kiss each other on the lips, but a peck. It's not, like, but my dad, my mom, my brother, and it has
Yeah.
been a source of like weirdness for people. And I'm like, that's you.
Yeah.
Like
That's
we're hugging. Like I'm not. That if it makes you uncomfortable, that's how I'm an affectionate person. Ew, gross on you for for putting that assumption together. So the cultural context is so important.
It is. I think it was weird in that case because none of these are topics that were on the list.
We have
by
not
the way.
answered
This is
one
so
question.
funny to
No.
me. No, it's so funny. But like that was like I think it threw people off because it hadn't been shown before. Like if it is a
Mhm.
cultural norm, then why wasn't this normal? Like we never saw this play out
Yeah.
before. So it was this like kind of anomaly experience, I think, for a lot of people, and hard to digest that like, oh, this is normal because we never saw it. Okay, let's okay, hold on. Come back. Let's ground ourselves for a hot second. We're going in a million different ways. I'm loving it all though.
I was gonna
Okay,
say, when Ryan is like I said, we need to get video on here soon because
dude,
I
I
can always tell when you're
know.
just like perched up.
I know. Well, because something you said too made me think of this other like hypothesis that I want to bring up, but I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything that we planned on talking about. Damn it. But I do want to talk to you about it because I feel like you probably know what I'm talking about. Okay, well, first, let's like backtrack a little bit. So you're like, we often talk to, you're an interesting guest because a lot of our guests I would say are a little more cut and dry with like what they do, meaning like it's a tarot reader, it's a, literal just medium, like
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. You say that claircognizance and clairvoyance are kind of like your modalities that I guess are online and that you work with the most. Can you explain how those show up in your life?
yes. So I have this really fun theory that our intuitive, like the different clairs that we have, are also linked to like your learning styles. I don't know if you guys, it's so funny because I've heard that there are people that are like, yeah, like learning styles have essentially been debunked. Like no one is just cut and dry. Like you're just this. I think everyone has a different embodiment of different things, but I do think some of us have strengths, right? You do have all of your clairs, but some of them are stronger. And I think that it's important to work with what your strengths are and then slowly build out the other ones when the time comes. And the way that my claircognizance and clairvoyance manifests is my relationship to the physical world. So my favorite thing to do is if I am out and about, I I watch the world around me and I let things like happen and come to me. And so these things will look like sometimes angel numbers. For me, my angel number is my birthday, 423. So
Mm.
I get childishly hyped, like unbelievably. Whenever I see 423, for some reason, I'm like, you know what? It's the small things in life, right?
Mhm.
And um, I will also go to like bookstores and I will just, wander until I find something that I resonate with, right? So it'll be that like kind of inner curiosity that starts to manifest. That's typically how my claircognizance manifests, as this kind of curiosity of like, I want to know more. So I'm like, okay, let's lean into this. And also the way that I also read books. I remember when we had the little like preview call, you were like, how do you manage to get through so many books? It's because I read little segments at a time. I have books scattered everywhere. So like if we ever have a conversation, I'll be like, oh, you mean like
Yeah,
you
no,
mean
same. I've got a whole stack on the ground right next to me. Like seriously, they're falling over. I feel you. Totally feel
and
you.
it's fun because like I'll literally like look at a book and then be like, this there's something in here. I'm gonna pursue it. I'm gonna look more into it. And so from all the learning, then things like kind of piece together. And I remember one of the first intuitive hits that I had, I think it was actually during like some like Reiki session that I was doing, but The message I essentially got was your intuition is like a library, and it's all within you, and it will show you like this, like a giant library, like different books that will be like pulled out in your mind's eye and will show you what you need to know and like how you piece it all together. Um, and it's really amazing because I do believe that, the intuitive world, like the alternate, what, Uspensky describes as the fourth dimension, which is essentially just it's non-linear time. 3D is linear time, 4D is the non-linear time. It's a different realm.
But
But
wait, I thought we're in 5D.
oh, you want to hear something?
Fucking hate it.
My theory from Uspensky, because he doesn't talk about 5D, but I was reading about where 5D comes from. I think 5D is interconnectedness. I think that's it. Which means that if 5D is just interconnectedness, that literally means this is me being sassy. None of us are there yet.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
yeah, I would fully believe that. I've heard like it explained a different way. Do you know who Matthias De Stefano is? He's a little bit
No,
of
I
a
don't, but tell me
controversial
more.
guy, but like I'm so fascinated by him. I'll send you something about
Mm.
like a different podcast episode where he breaks down the dimensions. He's like quite literally like a divine being in a human body, and it's like the way he can talk about things is like actually like mind blowing. He's like completely changed my perspective on even how I interpret astrology just from hearing him talk about sacred geometry and like that being a we should do a whole episode on sacred geometry, man. I would love to get him as a guest, but he breaks down dimensions in a way that makes sense. I cannot regurgitate to you, but like literally, good God, it's amazing. And even like the fifth dimension interconnectedness, even he kind of explains, or at least he has in one thing, um, that it's kind of like where the soul groups meet. So it's the like different than like soul mates, which you can run into here, but like the soul, how you kind of come in a cohort and you run like the soul groups come in at like all throughout different lifetimes. And so there's an interconnectedness there. So I think you're like right there.
So glad. Yeah. No, and when you're like, yeah, like people are gonna get left behind, I was like, what is that?
Yeah, what?
Separation.
no, you're
Yeah.
not. Yeah, like that's the whole no, that blends into that I'm better than you. Or like if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're a bad boy, bad girl. Like you're not gonna get on the ride. It is so wild. I never thought how Christianity did. I mean, it permeates everything, but the way you described it, to, catch back to the beginning makes so much sense.
Yeah. When you think about okay, I always argue that our sense of self is really closely linked to our values, right? So if I know who I am, if I understand my identity, all of these things essentially, like my identity in my being and also like belonging, but also how people perceive where I fit in my identity, right? All these different things affect the way that I show up in the world and how I'm received in the world. And ultimately, the experiences from me showing up and being perceived creates my values because the values derive from our experiences. And those values will transcend into more of certain kinds of identifiers, which means like if you look at Disney fairy tales, for example, I did a deep dive about this, but the Grimm's brothers, Charles Perrault and Hans Christian Andersen were all Christians. Charles Perrault was a Catholic, but what they did was they took these indigenous fairy tales from different parts of Europe and changed them up to adhere to specific Christian values. And oftentimes notice that women who behave unfavorably get punished, whereas women
Mm.
who exhibit certain values get rewarded. Hans Christian Andersen really hated his cousin Karen. He had a cousin called Karen and ended up writing, or maybe it was a half sister, but ended up writing the story about the red shoes, where she like gets these like beautiful like red shoes and something happens where like she can't stop dancing. And so like even when she goes into church, she like can't stop dancing. And then she ends up just kind
Huh.
of being taken away through the entire village because she can't stop dancing. Um, and the creepy thing about that was it was just because she was excited about having a pair of red shoes that she was perceived as being like conceited and full of herself.
Whoa. And then probably labeled like a witch or demonic
Right.
or
Yeah.
because she's having a
Yeah.
nice time, because she's
Yeah.
enjoying life.
Yeah, right.
I would have
Exactly.
been, I mean, March 1st
Girl, you would have been burned at the stake in
exactly.
any
March
other
1st
era.
is when was the beginning of the Salem witch trials. So I was like, oh,
Of course,
coincidence?
reincarnated Jezebel over
Yeah.
here. I am
And
dead. I can already tell the show notes are going to be incredibly long, you guys. Like every single one of these references she's bringing up, I'm going to try and find, and I'll link below. So just go look at the show notes if you want to go read
if
the
you
story of the red shoes. I'll find it.
if you need help, like let me know, because
Yeah,
this
I
is
will. I
partially my
probably
fault.
will. Well, I'll want to like verify that like any source like that one. I don't want to just find one. I'll like verify it through you first, make sure it's like a good one. I don't want to get like so off track. I mean, we're not even off track. There's no such thing in this podcast, but I do want to bring in some of these other topics because there's like literally some like fucking like mind-bendy, wonderful topics on here. But you bring up values, total sidebar question that has nothing to do with anything. But do you find any, I just always think about this like when I'm reading for people, but do you find any difference between like the words values, like versus beliefs versus morals versus principles, or are these like synonyms for you?
Ooh, good
You,
question.
I feel like it's such a small change, if anything, but like,
Yes, okay, so you said values, beliefs. What were the other ones?
morals and principles. I feel like morals and principles are maybe the same.
Morals, principles, and values are usually very intertwined.
Yeah.
And then I would say that those all inform our beliefs.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
sometimes it's like the nuance of the certain words. I love going in deep dives about words. So like that's like my favorite thing
Same.
ever.
This
You're
is what,
pulling.
yes.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is,
and that's also a part of my clear cognizant practice, where I'm like, if I will notice the energy of certain words and kind of be like, what is up with that? And then I'm like, let's go dive into like the history of the etymology and the origins
Mhm.
of. And it's so funny. I've always hated the word nice. Like there's something about the vibe of the word nice. It's
Because
always
it's a
bugged me.
Megan
manipulation
too.
tactic. Because nice is Mr. Nice Guy. It's a manipulation tactic because you're trying to get something. You want to be a kind person, but kind people will tell you what's up. They'll hold you accountable. Nice is trying to, to placate, to get by. So that's why, because it is a bullshit word.
And you know what? The etymology of that, I think when you dive in enough, nice was also a synonym for the word stupid.
Oh, I
Like
believe
what?
it makes, I mean, God, I wonder if thesaurus.com, I love going, like
Dude,
different
or
sources.
the etymology one. Or like I always think like kind is also cool because like I'm also an etymology freak. And I always think of like, okay, well, kind would be like more of the root word there, but like words that use that, meaning like kindred, right? Like kind is in kindred, and kindred is such a like sweet word that's like you are like someone I treat like family or something, right?
Well,
Like
coming back to the
kin even there. Like
interconnectedness of it all. Yeah, a
yeah,
kindred
yeah.
spirit.
So
Yeah.
kind, to treat somebody kindly is like to treat you as like this person that I really hold valuable in my life or something. Nice. What the fuck is that? What does that mean?
Well, it's respecting that you're a human. I might not like you, but you're a human being. And yeah, I'm going to give you that reverence. I'm going to give you that respect that you're a fellow creature on this weird rock.
Yeah.
And we're doing the best that we can.
I'm just gonna go ahead and throw out this other like thing that I wasn't gonna bring up.
I was about to say, what did you want to, what
The word
question did you
thing,
want to
because
ask
we're talking about
about?
words now. Yeah. Do you know I'm not like an expert in this at all, but I do find it interesting. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, or it's also called like linguistic determinism, I believe. It's like the kind of hypothesis, I guess, that the language you speak really shapes your perception of the world, like actual language. And it's like the two like common examples with that would be like languages, con how gender is a construct because of certain languages, like how some languages will gender words, right? And so in those societies, the roles of male versus female tend to be more split because the language itself is split,
Like
masculine,
Spanish?
feminine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But same with like perception of time in language, and like how there's different tenses in different languages, right? And like some languages, especially like indigenous languages, like I cannot name like the tribe, but I know that there's like one tribe in particular that definitely does not adhere to past or present or past or future tense. So they don't really conceptualize anything but the here and the now. And so, like, when a relative passes, it's almost like they don't exist anymore. Like, it's like you're only rooted in the now moment and like who's
You
around
want to talk about living
now.
in the present? Like
It's
those
really
people,
interesting, but like, it's cool
yeah.
that language does that. Like, I'm so fascinated by language too, clearly Gemini, but like, it's for me, like the way I always think of it is like sound vibration there predates actual language, right? Like that's why we got like om and like these tones and things that mean stuff. But we've now words in any language encapsulate the sacred sound of things, right? And so why we chose to encapsulate a word or like a sound in certain ways or piece certain sounds together through any language is that has to naturally shape the way that you perceive the world, right? I just think it's really interesting. I have no point in bringing this up. I just wanted to
No,
know
no,
if
no,
you.
no. I have a lot of thoughts about that. So I remember reading about how different languages that you speak can actually affect the way that you perceive color.
Side note, how many languages do you speak?
So I studied a total of 7,
Jesus Christ.
but
What?
I only speak about like maybe like three or
Like
Cool.
4. Depends.
3.5, but I can understand
And
5.9.
so I can tell you this, like no, honestly, like a lot of my languages are like elementary level, but like it's really fun because at least I can like read a lot more. But in Chinese, we actually speak in the present tense, but it's the contextual clues that indicate whether it's in the past or the future or, what period of time. And the character we use for he and she is actually like it's the same when you speak it. You can only identify whether it's a he or she based on whether it's where like when it's written. So we have like ta, and that's why like I don't know if you've ever met any Chinese people, but sometimes they tend to confuse the different pronouns.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, I'm like so into the pronoun conversation. So like I was like on the forefront of it back in like 2012, literally. Like I was like I worked for a LGBTQ nonprofit and had my first encounter, honestly, with that I knew of with genderqueer people. And they literally sat me down because one presented very masculine, one presented very feminine. And then I was in charge of promoting them. I used to be a publicist. And so I would set them up for media interviews and misgender them. And so they actually sat me down and they were like, hey, we don't identify as male or female. And I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, 2012, like nobody was
Yeah.
talking pronouns at this point in time. And so I was fascinated because I'm like just very open-minded to this stuff. And so I learned they were they, them, but then through that, I met so many other genderqueer people and the Z, Zers, Ms and all of that stuff. But I was so interested in it and ended up getting like a big AP story on this because journalists would not identify these people as they, them at this point in time. It just was not something they would do. Like I would constantly get feedback, like my editor won't do it because it's going to confuse the reader or whatever. But then one of the thems told me, and it was at least at the time in the dictionary. I don't know if now it is because they change the dictionary constantly, but it used to be in the dictionary that they and them were preferred pronouns when gender is unknown. Like it literally said that in the dictionary, and that always blew my fucking mind. Especially once the pronoun conversation started happening, like just a few freaking years ago, uh, that people would complain about they, them. And I'm like, it's literally in the dictionary. Like when gender is unknown, especially for an androgynous person, it just makes sense to say them, they, like you just, and we say it to each other, even when you present male or female, you say like, oh, they're cool. Not like, oh,
Yeah.
she's cool all the time. Like we literally
Yeah.
say they, them all the freaking time. I'm just interested in that. Like that, like, why did we get so divisive? Like, I feel like the English language has become more gendered as time has gone on or
Yeah.
something. It's very weird.
Yeah. I always find it really interesting because I remember like studying all these different European languages and like nouns are gendered, which is really chaotic because I can't remember any like specific words these days, but like I remember when they like in German, oh my God, it's even funnier. So they have like dirty das. So like it's like male, female, and like in neutral. They call it neuter in German. Neuter, I think. But okay, I know a lot of German like words. Cannot string a sentence together for the life of me because the German language is so complex. But
Ice
was
cream is like way too long. I mean, that is it.
you
That
know
is
what
a
butterfly?
complicated language.
You know what butterfly is in German? It's my favorite.
What?
Schmetterling.
Schmetterling. That's a
Schmetterling.
surprisingly short word for that. I like that though. That's like one of the prettiest German words I've ever heard too. That language.
Mhm.
I won't even get into the German thing. But interesting.
But yeah, like it was really interesting, like with like all these different, and it was funny because I remember just being like, I don't understand why this word would be considered masculine or why this word would be considered
Yeah.
feminine. And it was funny because, like you would assume that in some of these cultures where like some like what like Spanish and Italian, like these are very the cultures that have manifested are very like machismo and stuff. Like you would assume that like
Hmm.
some of these words would be fitting into specific categories, but then they don't. Like it's very random. They'll be like, yeah, like I don't
Yeah.
really know why this word is feminized or why this word is considered a masculine word, but
Mhm.
it's always been like fluid-ish.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, language is interesting. I
It
I
is
love
so
it because
interesting.
even in like because like I'm when I study like Buddhism and like even Taoism, now I'm kind of slowly going back into the practice of like relearning my Chinese. And Taoism is like it was like from like 400 200 BC. So like some of the words like are completely different meanings in context now. So I remember I was like looking at the Tao yesterday, and like I think it's the second line, and the word is fei chang, and fei chang means like a lot in Chinese, and I was like that I'm confused because the translation means like it's not constant. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna just sit back. And then it was the historical definition. It's really interesting now because in Chinese, like everything is deep. Like even when you say I've arrived, like if it's casual conversation, you use the word for Dao, like 我到了. So like saying like I've arrived, it really has to do with that Taoist, like I'm
Oh my
here.
God. Wow.
It's
It's super spiritual. That it really
I
is.
have
That's
I
like
have
crazy.
arrived.
Every word has like purpose. That also makes me think all of this, like kind of even just like how, going to Christianity again, like how the Bible has been translated and mistranslated over and over and over. And even like the word gay is a very, very new in translation history here. And that's like an annoying, different, whatever subject. But how that has literally shaped our political systems, like the current translations of the Bible, like are fucking holy, apparently, even though it's so far off from where things used to be back, in the Latin texts. Like
I
it's just
was
so
one of our
different.
TikToks. You were saying that history has only been accurately translated like 10% of the time, if that. I mean, I
yeah.
was going right before you. I was going on that, and then also I loved this that you were studying. You just referenced studying Buddha, and one of the Buddhist principles was read the room, which is something that I love. Is in fact like in spirituality, because so many people never read the room. It's like take a moment, look around before you open your fat trap. Like, what is is what I'm about to say going to be of value? Is it going, read the room? I think that should really be one of the first principles that we teach, like,
That's
or
so
any
true.
spiritual person teaches. Read, and I
Well,
had no idea that was in Buddhism.
and that's a good freaking exercise too, just like intuitively to like
Yeah.
practice that muscle a little bit, feel the room a little bit as part of reading the room, Like
Mm.
I think when you're tapped in a bit, you're gonna like, you sense when the room is like dense and heavy and whatever versus like when it's just
And
really
that's
fun
when
and
some
light.
people they're like, "This is my time." Tap tap tap. And it's like, no, it's not. Like fish it back, but like like you can say what you need to say at a later date. You cannot take back what you said, and your lack of reading the room. So it's such a deep lesson. So but I
That's
had no
so
idea that
interesting.
history had only been accurately transposed 10% of the time because of course it's only going to be the victors or the people in power who are like, yes, this is exactly how this whole, this whole event went. And we didn't have like the internet. Now you can see who's like with Israel and Gaza. Who's bad and who's good. If we didn't, it makes you wonder how many wars, how many things, what we have learned.
And, and okay, so this is like literally making my brain explode. Literally, because okay, because I just sat there and made the point about the Bible being mistranslated and whatever, and I'm like, yeah, well, like that's not the original translation, right? Like gay wasn't originally in the Bible. I feel like there's credence to that argument right there for like going against why people would say right now like it's not Christian to be gay. Just an example there, but at the same fucking time it's making me think like one of my like big themes for this year astrologically is the quote, tradition is the corpse of wisdom. And how I feel like, okay, but it in what cases does history need to be translated accurately? Like when does that matter? And when does it kind of fucking not? Like, because in that case, with that quote, it's like, I don't really give a fuck where we've been. I'm like, where are we right now? Like, because if holding on too much to tradition and history can really fucking prevent our progress, And it may not be the like pulse of the time that we're in just because however many years ago the translation was XYZ. Is that making sense at all? Where's the
Absolutely. And
line? When do we hang on to it and let it go?
it's a great question. I think something that's also really funny is when you also think about all the traditional religions, before it was written down, it was all orally translated, like and passed down. Have you guys ever played a game of telephone when you were in elementary school?
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine the chaos that is like when people finally decided, let's actually sit down and write that. And this is like very controversial because I know some people really are like very attached to their words. So like I'm not going to specify like what religion you resonate, you don't, whatever is accurate. But even in Buddhism, like it literally it was an oral practice. And the reason why they started writing down things. And what's actually also really cool is in Buddhism there is no centralized or universal like book. It's just a series of different different teachings, and they're translated and interpreted over time. But it is a practice. I would consider it a practice of integrity. And this is why the information that I share, I don't usually take credit for the things that I say. I am very good at being able to cite because I think that's actually a part of the spiritual practice in knowing who said it.
Damn it. Call me
and
out.
how and how it manifests. You know why? Because a lot of these spiritual teachers that we know, one of the ones that I really don't like actually that I didn't mention to you yet is Dolores. I have so much beef with Dolores Cannon.
Dude.
I really dislike her.
Yeah.
I really, really,
She's
really
problematic
dislike her
for
teachings.
sure.
Her voice
Unbelievable.
creeps me out. I just don't like it. Like every time I'm like, no.
Yeah, unbelievably like, oh my God, the unbelievable amount of harm that her teachings have caused in like dehumanizing people and suffering and such, just because like anyway, but these these practices of like knowing who said it also helps people to be like, okay, I don't know if I resonate with what you just said, but I'm curious to look down the line and see who else said it to try to understand it more deeply. And so when people come get readings with me, it's a really chaotic time because it's not just me reading for people, it's also like a conversation. What are your belief systems? Where do these things come from? Let me tell you about this random intuitive hit I just got because I'm going to talk about this whole concept based on this one card that reminded me of this concept. It's a really cool time.
That's the mark of a great reader right there when you consider.
And also you're fostering critical thinking, which I think is something that is lost because everyone just wants to be told what to do. We're inundated with information. We're tired. So people don't want to, whether it's a conscious choice or not, they don't want to critically think. But having a reading with someone like you, it's required. I mean, if you're not going to leave a session with you based on the conversation we just had and be like, well, that's that. Like, I'm just going to go about my day.
A lot of people want to be told what to do, which is the problem because I really agree. Like we're definitely getting bombarded with too much information. And that's why I actually argue that your intuition can inform your discernment and allow you to filter through the loud, like the chaos of everything, right? But that intuition needs to be cultivated. You can't just be like, yeah, I'm going to be intuitive off the bat because I always argue, and I've been developing this theory for about a few years now. Intuition and survival instinct are very closely linked. It's a very similar process, but they're different because survival instinct is for self-preservation, intuition is for human connection.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like
It's
instinct
supposed,
intuition. Like they can totally be
Well, instinct is your solar
misconstrued, but they're a little
plexus
different.
chakra, and intuition is your third eye. So, like that would make sense. I was just
I
reading
feel like,
something about
yeah, and I
that.
feel like instinct and primitive behavior is more of that knee-jerk reaction part of us, like impulsive versus intuition feels more like conscious and something where you can like stretch out time a little more.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
Hmm.
yes.
I'm like halfway where you are on the citing things. Like I think I do better than most people, but it's actually like such a Gemini trait in my mind to be like I'm a sponge for info and there's so much of it in my head that I will say if I can't cite something though, I'll always be like, I can't remember where this comes from, but I can find you that damn source. I know what I'm saying is not inaccurate at least, but
Yes,
damn,
absolutely.
citing really is so important. I feel like you're probably the type of person too who's like if you give a reading to somebody, I feel like you probably like literally will give them like a fucking reading list too. Like I
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
if a book or something comes up in a reading with me and I'm like, oh, you should read this or like a video or anything, I'll always follow up with the client via email and be like, by the way, here's your your resources that we talked about. I feel like
Hmm.
it's
Absolutely.
helpful. Nobody does that.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, I don't identify as a spiritual teacher. I don't like the hierarchy thing. So I'm just kind of like, look, like, there's plenty of people that we can learn from.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just like passing down the info, like, whatever it is, you know? But
totally.
I do believe, okay, this is just me being really petty because, the colonizers have done it throughout history. I think that, when we decide that we want to cancel someone for inconsiderate behavior that's very harmful to communities, I do believe in ripping off their info and not citing where it comes from.
Oh, wait, can you give a example? I'm
Um,
interested in that.
so like for example, I'm trying to think of like a white person who was like, contributed some info to spiritual spaces. Um but like okay, even okay, say okay, controversial. Like say it was like Abraham Hicks or something.
Uh-huh.
I would just say something and be like, "Oh yeah, like this is what like, I heard
You're right.
this." And then
You
not cite it.
No,
Hmm.
good point. Actually, like no, because still, Abraham Hicks had a very special place in my life and on my spiritual journey. I'm not gonna lie. Now I'm like very much out of the phase of it, but there were teachings like to this day, my favorite mantra is everything is always working out for me to this day. It's so all encompassing, so beautiful. But when I say that to other people, like if they're wanting affirmations or anything like that, like that's one of them, like I'll always throw out. It's so universal, but I
Mhm.
never credit her now, even though I know that
Yes.
she's the one who like coined that.
Yeah.
Or
Good,
was
No,
it
good
for sure.
example.
Abraham?
Good
Like,
example. Although I'm not consciously doing that. That's just good,
hmm.
good point though.
Yes.
We have permission, everybody, like steal the work of dumbass colonizers, please.
Yeah. No, and it's so cool too because I remember what was it? Oh,
Looking at
no,
you,
I was
Brene Brown. That was so
Dude,
disappointing.
we gotta talk about her on
That
a
was so.
different.
I mean, it
What's
was.
going on with Brene Brown right now? Wait, actually, Victoria, I would love your perspective on
Yeah,
this.
that.
okay. This is okay, slightly controversial. I okay.
Please.
Let me see how I can weave in my thoughts about the
You should
Abraham Hicks
start.
thing with
Your
Cool.
book
Brene.
should be called "Slightly Controversial." Like
I'm writing that down.
I love that actually. Yeah,
that
no,
is
for sure.
that.
And it is slightly okay because also I've got Victoria's birth chart.
That's
One thing
the
I'll say
name
about
of
it.
your book or something. A
Yes.
podcast, something.
Slightly controversial.
Slightly
I love
controversial by Victoria. Yeah.
I love the slightly part, like, because it's Victoria's a Libra rising, and Libra risings are so diplomatic. Like, they are the mediator, the peacekeeper. But I mean, they can't, it's all the scales. They want balance. So you seek balance in every moment in life. But that inherently means you're constantly thrusting yourself into situations of imbalance, or you'll point out an imbalance. I always say Libra risings are actually like what Aquarius wishes they were, like where Aquarius gets role of like the protester and the activist, and they are, but they are so off balance with it. Like they go against the grain to go against the grain. It's the rebel without a cause in many cases. I'm an Aquarius rising. I'm like saying it with love. I can't tell you how many times I get in trouble because of my like outsider out there thoughts because I'm not presenting it in a way that is balanced. Slightly controversial.
I like
You
that.
really do have this brilliant way of putting like a controversial thought out into the world, but I feel so comforted by it. Like it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad. So this is my thought about like let me connect it to Abraham Hicks and all that stuff. I I don't like when in spiritual spaces we start to black and white everything where we're like, "Oh, I only watch or consume spiritual media." Right? I don't consume anything else that's not high vibe. I'm so sick of that convo. But and even when it comes to, spiritual teach okay, real talk. A lot of spiritual teachers are like really insane human beings, like unbelievably harmful, have done a lot of damage to their communities. And I think that that needs to be acknowledged, part one. Part two, I don't think it erases like, what is it? If a smoker tells you stop smoking, it's still good advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Oh,
kind of the
yeah.
Yeah,
same
totally.
thing with when it like you can be a like not like this is gray area conversation, right? Like you can be like a quote unquote bad person and still give like good advice. Like remember when people were
Mm-hmm.
talking about like that one Hitler quote? It was a meme, and they're like, "Oh, well, Hitler said it, therefore like you agree with Hitler." That's such a black and white perspective
Yeah.
because humans are always on a spectrum. Like I think Hitler is a horrible human being based on the measurement of the amount of harm that was caused under his rule. Like we know that,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that, you can still like pick off a quote. You could just like not credit the guy or however it feels like it's necessary. But when I connect that to like Abraham Hicks, like Jerry Hicks was one of the top guys at Amway. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I just learned that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
And so he was preaching this manifestation stuff from his
Amway is
downline.
still around. Who
Yeah.
get what the like? Who do we have any listeners? I want to know. Are you an active Amway participant? I mean, like, how is this MLM still going?
Because
No,
they
you know
keep
what's really
rebranding.
interesting?
They keep changing their approach.
All of them keep doing that. So actually, a really fun coincidence. So I actually had the pleasure of meeting one of Oprah Winfrey's really good friends. Like I got to visit his house. I can't mention his name.
Mhm.
Wonderful person. I like from what I perceived.
My guess is
He
Deepak Chopra.
It's not, unfortunately. But he told me, like, I remember when I met, I think it was like 2015 that I met him, and he was like, "Oh, I actually just had dinner with the guy that's like the head of Amway." And I was like, "What are you guys doing together?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't really understand Amway to that extent. Now I understand. I'm like, oh, this guy like built his fortune on the uh in such a harmful way that targets disadvantaged people and promises them a lot of things.
Hmm.
Don't love
Mhm.
that. So it's
Hmm.
Amway's a sad one. MLMs get me really upset because, I know people think like, oh, like I'm a business owner, and I understand why you would assume that, but like, how do I describe this? You're being taken advantage of. Only people at the very top make it. Like, if you're a
Hmm.
small business owner, you should still be making a decent amount of money in like
Yeah.
the first few years, like because it's your idea. It's not like and
Mhm.
also the worst thing, it's so parasitic, like the business practice, because you're roping in all the people that are closest to you, right?
Mhm.
It destructs your closest interpersonal relationships at the core baseline because once it stops working, who are they going to blame for introducing you to it?
Totally. Totally.
Mhm.
What was that MLM movie that Kirsten Dunst was in, I think, or TV show recently? It was so fucking good. Oh my, it's like, oh God, it's like like the Queen of like Pennsylvania or hold on,
I
Kirsten
haven't seen
Dunst.
that.
Everybody needs to watch it. It's like amazing. And she climbs the ranks in like an MLM, Kirsten Dunst MLM show. I think it's a show, not a movie. Oh, it's on becoming a god in Central Florida. I thought I wanted a season two so bad. It's seriously so fucking good. People should watch that show. It'll be linked below.
I like it.
I know. I won't call out some particular family members I have who definitely got into MLMs. But I will say, I don't know, God, somebody out there was looking out for me because I definitely at a young ass age could tell like what an MLM was because I was like one of the few people that did not fall for it in my very
Mhm.
close circle. At a young age, I was like, what are we
Bless
doing,
you.
you guys? What is happening here? Um,
Mhm. But
I
Brene
would,
Brown,
Yeah, I was gonna,
yeah,
yeah.
please,
I'm so sorry. Okay, I just wanted to because I was like, okay,
please.
I'm gonna try to stay. I'm so sorry. I have such scattered
Are you
energy.
Nope.
Like
kidding? No,
I
this is
take full
like
accountability.
amazing.
But okay, I agree with our disappointment in Brene Brown, and I think that something that we often forget is that the people that are doing the most harm are the ones that need the most to heal.
Mm,
Mm.
And I often want, because, okay, look, if we all collectively, like every spiritual person was like, yeah, let's all get together. Because, okay, I know this is not the intention of a lot of people, but this is also me assuming that Brene Brown actually has a conscience. So if
Hmm.
she doesn't, the whole argument falls apart. But I think that a lot of people resonate with even Esther Perel. Also, I was a little bit disappointed in her statement as well, because Esther Perel also tried to do the both sides thing. And this is
mm.
not an equal thing. Like I will unapologetically take that stance because for me, I'm just like, I,
You're
I
talking
can,
statement on Israel Palestine, right?
yes,
For
I
listeners
can,
who don't know, like this is why Brene Brown's like very recently come under fire, like her pretty shit statement on Israel
yeah,
Palestine.
like I'm unapologetically pro-Palestine. That, and
Yeah.
I've been like this for like over 10 years. I've unfortunately had the unfortunate experiences of I've literally told a former IDF person that I went to college with, like, I'm pro-Palestine, man. Like, I don't know if this friendship can continue.
Yeah.
And it was like it was a jarring experience. And I think he decided for himself as well. He was like, okay, peace out. But I've had these situations like throughout my life where I'm just like, and it was funny because I was actually educated by a pro-Israeli teacher. So I'm really grateful that, he was able to give us enough information that I was able to come to that conclusion for pro-Palestine
Mm,
myself. Um, but it was really interesting because, even Esther Perel released a very similar statement, and Esther Perel acknowledges her history as well, because I think her parents were Jewish immigrants that had survived Auschwitz, I believe, from what I remember about Esther Perel. But people that do the most harm are people that also need to heal the most, right? Like there's a very deep trauma around the Jewish identity that I think a lot of people, a lot of pro-Jews that pro-Israelis that are also anti-Zionists that are also Jews. I'm so sorry, I totally butchered that. My brain is kind of jumping. A lot of anti-Zionists that are also Jewish have also been grappling with the complexity of their identity versus also, you know,
Mm.
going against
Hmm.
this state that, they assumed that was going to like protect them.
mhm,
And for me myself, I'm also grappling my own prejudices against the Zionists because that's
mhm.
also something that I believe that I need to work through because if I am capable of dehumanizing this group of people that are also participating in dehumanization, I am also just as capable of continuing that harm. I
Right,
really
right,
believe
right,
that.
right.
And that's something that I'm just continuously like working through because I'm really angry because I'm seeing people justify the unbelievable amounts of harm that we are watching and like it's scary because we're on the sidelines and we can see everything happening and there's nothing we can do about it, which really goes to show how upsetting the democracy is. It's not really democracy, is it? But the the statement that Brene Brown and even Esther Perel made is I'm assuming, given again that they are in good faith and that they actually are believing in this healing work, they may understand that the people that need to heal the most are the people that are doing the maximum amount of harm and may still want to keep that door open for the room for that
I
healing.
love it. I like that
That's
you
that.
have that
I didn't even think about
opinion.
that perspective. I
No, me
mean,
either. This is why I
at
love
all.
Victoria in general.
Yeah.
Like, totally always bringing a whole different perspective to the table. And I appreciate that you said it too, because honest to God, we like Brene Brown over here on this podcast. No, literally, the only time we had an episode that opened differently than our intro was some random episode. I forgot which one it was, but we like made all these Brene Brown jokes in the episode. And so we dedicated the episode to Brene Brown at the beginning. We were like, our Lord
And
and Savior,
her
Brene Brown.
work, like
It
her
was so
work
funny.
is
She's done
good.
a
And
lot of good.
it
Yeah.
was like the studies that were done, and
I
you
can't
can
discount it.
exactly. So I love that perspective of that, even a quote unquote bad person can give good advice.
Yeah.
Like,
Or it's like, shouldn't everybody be allowed to fuck up? You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Humans are flawed. We have to accept that
please.
humans are flawed because
Yeah.
even when we're on the progressive side, I've noticed like a lot of these like progressive like leftist movements that are happening right now on TikTok, I'm really grateful to see this conversation, is that like we keep tearing each other down. We're so upset, and we also need to unlearn that expectation of perfection, because it's fine to be upset and disappointed when people say horrible, controversial things. I've noticed like I tend to get a little bit triggered whenever any of my videos go viral, because I've been canceled 2 times. um,
Oh,
for
cool.
being a little bit inconsiderate. Yeah, it's an interesting time.
Congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
think that's a great thing. Yes. I mean,
But
you're still popping, and
Yeah, dude.
you got canceled for making people think. I mean, for challenging
Yeah.
a belief system. Like, get the fuck out of here.
I mean, it happens, but at the same time, like the internet, like a lot of us are traumatized and we're on the internet. I always say that social media apps, everything in the world really, like anything that's social media, anything that's like film, media, whatever, it's all shadow stuff. They're all shadow projections. They're not an accurate reflection of the world that we live in, but a lot of it is what we may like want or hope or expect or have some kind of assumption that exists. So when you see like when like one second. When you see how the social media culture manifests, right? When you see people engage in like, it's really funny. I'm not really that worried about cancel culture anymore, because you have people say like, oh, cancel culture doesn't exist. Oh, cancel culture is like I think cancel culture means well. But the problem is we don't know the difference between accountability culture and blame culture, and that is a very
Totally.
big difference. And when you are moving progressively, you have to also unlearn the fact that we all belong under the capitalist culture, the white
Uh-huh.
supremacist culture, which means that when you're engaging in canceling, and I'm like, look, we're humans. There's a Dunbar's number is the theory, right? Where apparently
Yeah.
humans can only manage about 150 to 500 relationships at once. People have large followings now on social media. Like even for me, like not 90,000, I can't conceptualize how big of a
Well, you
number
think
that
about how
actually
many
is.
people that actually is. That's a town. That's a
It's
town
yeah,
that's following you.
yeah, and like when you think about that as like a responsibility almost, if you're getting canceled and even just one person sends you a death threat, just
Yeah.
you're a human being. You are also like in fight or flight. Your amygdala may
Hmm.
overact. You might shut down too. That's
Yeah.
a normal human response. And unfortunately, like when you're part of these movements, I think there's a lot of social responsibility to one another and understanding that like there's certain behaviors that we engage in that actually are not contributing to the cause. And one of those things is knowing the difference between accountability versus blame culture. And blame culture is essentially singling out one person saying you're the problem, not understanding that you're actually a symptom of a greater problem. Because even, for example, in the case of, I believe that Chris Brown should be canceled, for example, right? But we keep blaming him instead of holding him accountable. This man has been enabled by an entire community of people that we're
Hmm.
not seeing online. We're only seeing Chris Brown. He comes up online sometimes and people are like, "Oh, this man is like, still trying to like, you know, trying to like, be relevant or whatever." He has a whole community of people that are justifying the harm that he does. And it's not just his fans, it's the people that he works with, it's his friends, it's his family, all these people that we're not seeing, but
Mm-hmm.
they're there.
Can
Yeah,
I tell
giving
you,
fuel to the fire.
I used to do a lot of like celebrity work in my former life career here. And he, I hate to admit it, was one of the best people I ever worked with. Like I know he was already like a woman beater. Like I mean, I already his reputation was already out there. I was so dreading looking like working with him, but that boy just made my job so easy. And most celebrities fucking sucked. He was amazing. He was like on
That
it,
might
would
be
do any.
why.
It was so
I,
weird. It was
I
so
wonder.
weird.
Yeah, I wonder why. Like maybe that might be why he's still in the industry, right?
Yeah,
Because
he
maybe
treats people
there's
that's fucked up. I can't say he treats people really well.
But also,
Out of
it comes back to the
context,
whole
God.
point that we've been discussing. This is another full circle moment.
Yeah, there are people I'm sure that you probably know this personally, but I'm sure there's people with like good people personas like in the public eye that are like absolutely like horrible people to like everybody that's like behind the scenes.
Oh God. Oh my God, the stories I have that I cannot say. Dead fucking serious. Oh
Yeah.
fuck,
How many
man.
One
NDAs
of
did you sign? So many? Is that why you
You know,
can't say anything?
not a whole lot. Like only a few. Like, and it was only a very, very few because normally it's like the celebrity would come to my client and the contract was already worked out. Like they had to do certain things. So I was in charge of like upholding them to their agreements, you know? I didn't have to sign an NDA if they went outside that and did some stupid, foolish shit, you know, although there was a lot of covering things up. I feel like with cancel culture, blame culture, all that stuff, like my bigger problem is like the lack of um encouragement for rehabilitation. Like what is the path forward from that?
Yeah.
Call out, hold accountable, blame. I don't really give a fuck. Like, but like believe in people changing and rehabilitation. Like I really firmly believe
Yeah.
that needs to
I
happen.
like in my job, like that's something that's like really big for me. Like I know it's really controversial, but like in the work that I do, like I'm morally gray. So I I'm open to anybody coming to my table or coming to get a reading with me. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done.
What about Chris
I
Brown? Would you?
even if it was yeah, like even if it was
You'd
Chris
probably
Brown, I would
help
have
him.
Yeah.
yeah, because for me, like I really like I remember when I was introduced to the idea of abolitionism, like the modern abolitionist movement and
Hmm.
how that really has to do with like rehabilitation and understanding the interconnectedness of things, right? Like it's not punishment. You're focusing on like investment in like social services, right? Like the welfare state stuff. You're not just like throwing people in jail and like throwing away the key. You're really believing that people have the capacity to I really do believe that.
Hmm.
Like even in my own perspective of the way that I see people in the world, I really believe that everyone is capable of change. It's just like how committed are you to being aware of those changes, right? Because either you're going to like try so hard to stay the same. I think it takes a lot more work to stay the same than it is to
Hmm.
grow. It's the same amount of effort actually. It's just
Hmm.
scarier. And okay, fun story. Are you guys familiar with Bashar?
Yep.
Yes.
So I just came across this like maybe like a month ago or so, but I've been really resonating with some of the things. And it's really funny because I cannot handle the alien stuff. Like for me, in my
Yeah, it's a
mind, I'm
lot.
like, there's too much stuff going on planet Earth, right? You have spirits,
Real
you have
quick for
entities.
anybody who maybe doesn't know, Bashar is like a male Abraham Hicks almost, like a little more out there, I would say. Little more
Yeah,
alien.
yeah, a little more, very much alien. And it's interesting because a lot of things that he says, I'm like, oh, I've like already learned this. So it's actually really interesting that you're saying these things I really resonate with. But one of my favorite things that I've been sitting with and I've been obsessing over this subject is I think he says something, and it's not word for word, but he says, your fear of the unknown is the fear of meeting the versions of yourself that you haven't met yet.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh yeah. Because like what was it? I think it was last summer. I was flying out to LA and I remember it was like super early in the morning. I was half asleep. I was really tired and my flight got delayed or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, now that means I'm going to miss my next flight. And so I was half asleep and I wandered up to the front desk and she switched my flight and everything for the second round. So I was like, okay, I'm fine. I did that half asleep and I was like, ooh, autopilot Victoria, we're on this stuff. Like we get it. And I hadn't met that version of myself in like a really long time. So it was really
Hmm.
lovely to see how there are versions of myself that maybe have existed in the past. They like come back around sometimes.
That
Hmm.
is so important to remember because I feel like my biggest like fear, if I were to really think about it, of like the unknown isn't even as much like of meeting the next version of myself. It's more like feeling like the current version is unfinished. Like what I'm not, but I'm not at like fully formed yet. Like I have more to do in this state before I move on to the next version of myself. But it's cool to like keep that in mind that like you don't have to fully let go of the current version to also meet the new version and many old versions can come back around for sure.
Yeah, like they're all there. It's like I remember this one practice where it was like I accept you for all that you are and all that you are not.
Hmm.
Ooh, because usually it's
Hmm.
like you'll hear marriage vows like I love you for all
Yeah.
that you are and all that you will become. And it's like, oh, that's nice. But this is, like I accept you for everything that you're not, everything that you'll never be, everything that you'll lack. That could probably be the truest definition of love.
Yes. I mean, I think that's literally the point of relationship anyway, is not to just like flow very smoothly with somebody. What the fuck's the point? It's like to rub
Mm-hmm.
up against someone and have friction and like chaos and see yourself in all those messy ways.
Yeah.
And by like embracing someone else's mess, it's just you also encountering your own and learning to love yourself through your own, too.
Mm-hmm.
You need
Hmm.
other people. I'm like such a relationship like geek.
I
I think
love
it's
it.
so important. People don't really, we're in such a like you kind of said, like individuation state of mind now. And there's so many people talking about how like they just want to be single forever. They don't need anybody. And I'm like, that's a phase. I get it. It's a phase though. You're gonna like come out of that and like realize just how
Well, you
fucking
might
much you need
not have a
someone.
relate, but you still have relationships. You have
Yeah,
friendships. You have,
exactly.
so these people, this hyper independence, it's like, no, no, no. If you get kicked out of the tribe, you were dead. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we need people. You need hugs. You
Mm-hmm.
need community. This is not debatable.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
So the original topic for this episode is so not applicable now. We're gonna literally need to have you back on like again. I have a
I
really
stopped
good
looking at the
feeling.
questions. Like I've
There's
stopped.
so I know, but there's literally so many good ones that we just won't have time to get into now. But like I would like actually love to have you back, and I feel like people would like love hearing from you again. I just think we're obviously riffing on like all of this podcast has been like one massive serendipity session that we do where it's just
Hmm.
like a total random conversation. I love it, and we should I think absolutely freaking have you back to go into all sorts of other topics. Like I'm so interested in some of these. But the original topic we were going to cover, I would like to touch on that at least. Like I think it's really fascinating is this concept of spiritual ergonomics. And like I had actually waited a while before approaching you about being on this podcast. Like I knew I wanted you to be on it. I was just like, what theme, and then I saw you go live and this was like the title of your live and I was like, that's really interesting because like ergonomics I always think of like as like your workflow, like how do you work best, and I had never considered it in a spiritual sense. So anyway, like please explain this concept of spiritual ergonomics and why it's important to you.
Okay, so I literally pulled up my cousin's like little definition of it because it was his concept that he came up with. So my cousin used to have this like streetwear brand that he started, and it was very deeply influenced by his spiritual practice and his path. And he loved Ram Dass. And the quote that he used that is inspiring the spiritual ergonomics is the most you can do for anyone is to work on yourself.
Ooh.
And when we look at like the way that I understand spiritual ergonomics from him explaining that is when you think about like ergonomics in like the traditional sense, it usually has to do with like the office and like work and like how to be
Mm-hmm.
more productive and how to like be more comfortable and
Mm-hmm.
to kind of go longer and like last more what's that word sustainably.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I really understand spiritual ergonomics. And so I also believe that it's also an encompassing idea of understanding that like no spiritual path is going to be identical to anybody. Like
Hmm.
even on my in my studies of Buddhism, it's really interesting to see the difference between how like a world religions class, which I've taken many of those, describe Buddhism versus like actually studying it as like a practitioner. Um, how a lot of like from what I understand about Buddhism, it really has a lot to do with personal accountability and understanding that like in Buddhism we do have the concept of right and wrong, but it's very different from the way that we've been conditioned to understand right and wrong because when you have like the noble eightfold path, right? Like right speech, right action, right thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just like a concrete idea of what is right and wrong. It's that you're constantly revising and learning and updating as you go. And it's
Hmm.
you that holds it accountable. And the core lesson that I got from Buddha is Buddha will say about his teachings, I'm using my finger to point at the moon, but don't mistaken my finger for the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm learning a spiritual concept, that's the finger. But how do I
Hmm.
actually like deeply understand the moon, right? Like, how do
Mhm.
I, actually integrate this into my life? And so spirituality requires so much personal accountability. And that's why, like, I remember I made a video a long time ago, and I might want to redo it. I have this theory about why a lot of people will turn back to Christianity from spirituality and call it demonic.
And that's
And
happening rare. Like there seems to be an uptick, or maybe it's just my feed, but you had like Doreen Virtue, and all these also micro influencers and creators who just that was the first person that I was like, oh shit, what is
Mhm.
this?
because they were following their own temptations. Like, it's not even spirituality's fault. Like, spirituality is like an ever growing and changing concept and idea. It's your job to identify how to correctly practice. There is no, like, even the idea of Buddha being a spiritual teacher, like, it is no spiritual teacher. There's actually a Zen debate that I was looking into, and somebody asked, like, what is the Buddha? And the spiritual teacher says, oh, he's like a wiping stick, which is basically the equivalent of toilet paper.
Mm,
Mhm.
And people are just like, whoa, it's because you're not supposed to put these spiritual teachers and such like on such a pedestal.
Yeah.
yes.
It's a representation, but it's not the right pedestal. And so, under Christianity, I would say, and look, Christianity is not easy, but I say it's easier than a spiritual path because Christianity has the structure, it has the format, it has the
Mm.
certain practices, it has the philosophy. Like, I studied Christianity. Like, I wanted to become a nun at one point in my life. When I was studying in undergrad, I was like, you know what, being a nun sounds like a lot of fun. You just like study and you do a lot of research and whatever. Um,
Little
but
gardening. Like,
I love Christian theology. Like, I think it's so interesting. Like, I've read like Martin Luther, I've read St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, like all these different philosophers that inspired, the Christian teachings and such. And you cannot separate the Christian Bible from these other spiritual philosophers. And a lot of people will say like the Christian fundamentalists and stuff will be like, oh, well, studying the Bible, like we're going to take the Bible literally. And I'm like, yeah, but you're still interpreting it based on these different philosophers. Like, you
mm,
cannot separate it. And
Mm.
so, um, yeah, like there is more structure in the Christian space because you can always consult a priest, right? Like, yeah,
mhm,
sure, like in other religions, you can go consult like a monk or something, but there, the spirituality is like you're not going to get your hand held the whole way, unfortunately.
mhm,
That's the really difficult part, and you have to keep holding yourself accountable, and that's really tough for people.
Yes.
We
I
mhm,
we
think
live
this
we
is so
live
true.
we live in a culture of submission, like truly. And so, like a lot of people, sometimes people will come to my reading, very rarely, thank God, because I think a lot of them really do a lot of do a lot of research and really commit to understanding me before they decide to book. But like, it's, yeah, sometimes people will come in and be like, okay, so like, tell me, like, what do I do? And I'm like, whoa, right? My regulars know I'm going to hold you accountable. Like, people, sometimes they'll ask me questions and I'll be like, you know the answer. And they
Hmm.
hate
mhm,
when I say that, but they know, they do know. And my job is to hold the space for you to understand you are the ultimate authority in your life. You're the one that you have your own autonomy. You just don't realize it yet.
Hmm.
mhm,
Or you've been conditioned your whole life to follow something, right? Like, Christianity also teaches you submission, right? There's a hierarchy. And I actually will say I do respect Protestantism a little bit more because under Catholicism, it's very hierarchical.
Mm.
mhm,
But in Protestantism, you can talk directly to God. Catholics, you have to talk to a priest to get to God,
Yeah.
right? There's
mhm,
a little bit more of a thing. And I understand why. Like, I think Catholics have a fundamental belief that like people can't be trusted individually. But I
mhm,
did like Martin Luther. Martin Luther was an interesting one. The guy, by the way, side note, a part of my spiritual practice is also to like educate against anti-Semitism because conspiracy theories are a really big thing with anti-Semitism and stuff. Martin Luther was a raging anti-Semite, which really annoys me, as are a lot of Christians, right?
Hmm.
But this man also said he acknowledged that not everyone is going to be a Christian, right? Not everyone. So if you're looking at like a little town or village or community, we know that not everyone's going to convert to Christianity, which is why he argues it's your responsibility as a Christian to lead by example.
mhm,
Because, if you lead by example, people will also be influenced by that behavior.
Yeah.
mhm,
And I was like, good job, man. Like, good job being realistic about it. Because, like, there's some sects of Christianity that's like, oh, no, we need to convert everybody or we're all going to hell. Like, remember that one missionary guy that, like, went to some, like, indigenous island and ended up getting
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
he
Oh my
recently just
God.
got
Yeah.
he like do not go here, do not go here, and he got speared to death. Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't like I don't even have words to describe just the absolute like shock and disappointment. But that is the mindset that, we have in a lot of these Christian spaces. It's like, I know more than you. I know better than you.
Hmm.
Spiritual practice, I can only acknowledge that what I'm experiencing in you is just a projection of how I'm seeing you. That's my accountability.
Hmm.
And so even when I do readings, I'll essentially, if I pull something, I'm like, oh, you know what? Like this card is indicating whatever pattern thing that I'm explaining to this person. I'm projecting my own personal experiences and whatever intuitive hits that I get. That person is going to also take their projections and meet me halfway as well.
Hmm.
mhm,
And they're going to take what they need from it. That's how intuitive readings work. It's your own
Yeah.
intuition that's interpreting and understanding it. And I think that's the
mhm,
really important like realization and practice.
Totally,
mhm,
which some of that is even education on the client's behalf of like understanding what do you even do when you get a reading from someone? Like there's such a like procedure or protocol that I feel like people need to like understand. A lot of people
mhm,
don't know like what they're getting, or like I hate when like I meet with a client and they're like very hesitant to tell me about things in their life, like what's
mhm.
going on. And I'm like, no, I need to know where you're at right now so I can better look at your chart and see how things are showing up for you. But they view it like fortune telling,
Tell me,
because
yeah,
they're
tell
used to the
me about
scam version
me.
of this all. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like, who cares if I accurately tell you how many siblings you have? Ooh, that's cool. But what the fuck's that doing for your soul? Nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I loved the Buddha quote, I think you said, about the finger pointing at the moon. Because one of my favorite quotes about astrology, it's like literally like the astrological version of this, where it's from Stephen Forrest. And he said, astrology is just a finger pointing at reality, meaning like I love to use that when people talk about astrology being a belief system or something. I'm like, it's not, it's a tool, right? Like you don't,
Mhm.
astrology is not reality. It is the finger that points at reality. You use it to better understand yourself and anything you're
Yeah.
going through.
I would also argue that I think the problem with pop astrology is that people don't understand that nuance. It's the same thing with like with intuitive readings and stuff. Like they think that like, come see me and like I'll tell you about your future. And I'm like, I'll surprise you and I'll be like, hey, but guess what? You could actually create your future. It's
Mhm.
not set in
Yeah.
stone. Congratulations. And people are like, oh no. But it's there's some critiques, right, that I've seen. There's one very famous, I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but No Nonsense Spirituality on
Oh,
TikTok.
I yeah, I can't think of who it is, but I know the name for sure. I definitely have
So
seen it. Yeah.
I actually really enjoy, she really challenges the way that I perceive things. And sometimes I find myself getting like kind of triggered because I'm like, ugh, but I lean into it because I'm like, I think this is important for me to learn. And she criticized spirituality, not spirituality, astrology.
Oh,
And
blonde-haired woman, right? She
yes,
works like
yes.
yeah. I know exactly what you're
And
talking
she
about.
goes, yeah, and surprisingly, no one's been able to guess my sign correctly. You know why? Because a bunch of the pop astrology girlies got really upset and they all decided they wanted to like make assumptions based on what she had said. But those like, and
So
she's like, yeah,
dumb.
no. And she was like, yeah, no one guessed my sign right. And I'm like, yeah, because you're getting all the pop astrology girlies. You got them
Yes.
mad.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and it's like if you're gonna guess any sort of sign on someone, it's typically gonna be the rising that you're actually like really guessing. The sun may not be shining that day for that person or
Hmm.
whatever. Honestly,
Yeah.
astrology's fucking weird. Listen, this has been excellent. Like I feel like we can obviously go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And like I think we just need to consider this part one with Victoria.
All
Like
day.
dead fucking serious. I think like
Mhm.
my original like topic of this was going to be just spiritual ergonomics because there's so much that we can talk to you about that. But then we got all these other topics that I'm like not going to let you off the hook on. So we're gonna have you back like
Slightly
sooner rather than
controversial.
later. So serious. I know. I was like, I wrote down. I was gonna say slightly controversial spirituality. Like I wrote down a couple other like titles. The other one that I wrote down was kitchen sink spirituality because this is like fucking everything right now. Like there's so much going on
Mhm.
here. Um, so I love it. But I feel like we should kind of close it out.
How do people work with you? Are you accepting clients? Like what's the process? How do they go about it?
Yes. So I'm currently in development of a Patreon, and
Yeah.
that is that intention. I'm actually trying to start my own podcast as well, but I'm kind of like slowly dancing around that. However, it has been my dream because my spiritual teacher tried roping us into a cult, and there was a lot of like financial manipulation, and that just really bugs me. Right? It's such a common, crazy thing that happens. And I was just kind of like, you know what? I want to try to like create a space where I can just like throw out like as much information as possible for people to like take in, consume, learn how to use their own discernment, all that jazz for like an affordable cost. Because you know what? Like it's time people like take agency into their own hands. Like if you're really willing to take that challenge on, please. But the so the Patreon is like in development, and I think it's like pretty much going to be done by the time the podcast comes out. So it's actually really exciting. And that will cover the subjects of identity, intuition, dreams, and shadow work.
Love.
Cool.
And then you can also work with me on one-on-one. I do mini readings, but I personally prefer that you seek me out like in like the fullest like one-on-one, because a mini reading is only going to get you like a tiny like 2% of the puzzle. If you actually get a reading with me, it's going to be like this conversation we've had today. You're going to learn a lot. I'm going to teach you how to use your own intuition if you don't already, or just help you revise and just reinforce the fact that you do have intuition, because everyone has intuition. And and I think that's about it. And you can also find me on my socials on victoria.Thérèse on TikTok and victoria.Thérèse_ on Instagram.
Okay, dope. We'll link everything below. If the Patreon's up, we'll have that linked. Once it is up, we'll just throw the link in there. I'll update the show notes as well. And then like I think people can also probably check your website and socials for like if it's not up, follow her so that you're abreast of when everything pops out. I'm so excited. Like seriously, this has fed my brain so much. It's like start of my day, and I'm just gonna have a great day after this. Like I'm dead serious. And I'm so excited about like all these other topics that we're gonna talk about in part two. We're gonna get you on like I want to do sooner rather than later. So
yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I just want to say like it's been so lovely like hanging out with you guys. And
yay!
Yeah,
like
I'm wonderful.
I'm kind of like let's do this again ASAP. Like,
oh yeah,
like,
no,
I feel like a
we're
kid
gonna
again. It's
I feel like
amazing.
you're like gonna be like a little bit of a mainstay voice, whether you like it or not. There's just like a great vibe, and clearly this is the first guest I think we've had where we truly like it was a serendipity session. Like we did not abide by
we didn't go by any of
it.
Not one question. Like I said, I put my phone away.
Yeah, we had so many other amazing topics, which I think like I mean there's like some of these topics are like so fucking good that like there's like 5 whole episodes out of this list period that we can obviously be riffing on. So get ready for more Victoria. In the meantime, follow her, book her up, please. There's so much more to learn from that brain. Like it's nuts. I can't wait to see like where you go in life. I'm so glad to know you.
Yeah, this was incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Any final words, Megan?
No.
Well, then everybody wish by the time this comes out, go wish Megan a happy belated birthday because it'll have passed now. But yeah, very happy about that. All right. Well, let's close it out, everybody. Cue the final outro song. Go.